Welcome to our council meeting for the 7th of September. And spring is finally here, which is great to see. So welcome to our team. And to open our meeting this morning, welcome Bobby. Bobby comes to us from St John, the Anglican Church here in Feilding. Welcome and invite you to open our meeting.
Thank you. Your Worship, councillors, staff, thank you for inviting me to be part of your opening ceremony. I have spent about over 20 years actually attending all council meetings, but I always sat at the reporter's desk. I've never been invited to sit at the table before or to speak. I am here. My name is Bobby Nichols. I'm here as an authorised parish chaplain of the Anglican parish of the Arua, which just means that I can do pretty much most things that a priest can do, but not everything. I'm not priested. Today we address the Creator, however you perceive that entity or spirit to be. But in the words of the Anglican prayer book, Creator God, Mother and Father of us all. This group of people from diverse backgrounds and experience give their time and talents for the government of the Manawatu district, a population of even more diversity of ethnicity, culture and creed, that all may live the best life possible in this part of Aotearoa, New Zealand. May this council be mindful of each other's right to be heard and listened to, allow each person's dignity to be maintained as their opinions are expressed and debated. May wisdom be employed, compassion felt, and justice for all expressed as decisions are made, which affect all the people of this district. And may the words of your mouths and the meditations of your hearts be acceptable to our loving God. Amen.
Thank you. Thanks, Bobby. Thank you for joining us this morning. Is there anything happening in the St John family, in that community that you think would be of interest to council? Happenings, things coming up?
Our issue at the moment is we don't have a minister, a full-time priest, or a vicar, as you may be more familiar. Our last vicar, Sarah McMenamin, contracted long COVID and is still very unwell and unable to do a lot. So she resigned the end about October last year. We were very fortunate to have the Reverend Tony Kipax, who had come to Feilding in a non-priestly role to look after his elderly father and get him settled. And he came to church one day and said, "Is there anything I can do?" And we said, "Yes, please." And so he was here, apart from January when he went to England, he was here until last month. And so we're now totally reliant on people like myself who are lay ministers. The Anglican parish of the Arua includes not just St John's, but stretches to Rangawahia, and where they have St Barnabas, which is pretty much run by the community. Kimbolton, St Saviour's has a small community there. For the size of the town, it's quite a small Anglican community. Kiwatia only has 3 or 4 services a year, but it's a beautiful church, very popular for weddings, as is St Michael's Stanway. St Michael's Stanway had a couple, as if you've talked to Alison about St Michael's, you'll know that we had a couple of break-ins and lost all our brass, including the ones that were screwed to the wall. But it is a lively community. Colleton is also a very active Anglican community. St Mary's Beaconsfield has recently had quite a lot of work done to it. Some 25 years ago, they held the centenary a year early because I thought it wasn't going to last another year because the people were aging rapidly. But it's now quite a lively little church, which is good. St John's itself is running along nicely. We're fortunate to have Sharon Tafatu as our administrator. Thank you for letting her go from the council. She uses her council experience very well. Yeah, and the hall is well utilised, probably 7 days a week, really, for all sorts of activities. What else can I tell you about the St John's? The reason we haven't really got a minister at the moment is because we can't afford one. The vicarage needs quite a lot of updating. We can't even rent it out at the moment until we've upgraded it. I blame COVID for the lack of finance because, of course, we stopped passing the plate around during COVID because that was an issue. So, yeah, but yeah, we're chugging along there. Yeah.
Thanks, Bobby. Thank you. Yeah, and it's good to be reminded about how wide the church community is across the whole district. So thank you for that. We wish you all the best with getting the vicarage up to speed and also getting a permanent vicar at some point. So
hopefully.
Yeah, so thank you. And thank you for your time today and opening our meeting.
My pleasure. Thank you, Helen.
So apologies this morning. Welcome Councillor Bell on Zoom. I hope you're feeling better. And otherwise we have a full team this morning. So item 3, we have 3 requests for leave of absence with a recommendation there. I won't move it because one of those is for myself to go on a course. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Short.
Below request for leave of absence be approved. Councillor Colin McPherson, 19th to 24th September 23. Councillor Michael Ford, 8th to 12th November 23. Mayor Helen Boyce, 24th to the 29th.
Oh, sorry. Forgot to turn it on. Grant, you're slow. You meant to. Oh, yes, sorry. And Mayor Helen Woolboys, 24th to 29th of September 2023.
Thank you. Have a seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Hadfield. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Motion is carried. Thank you. So item 4 is confirmation of minutes from our previous council meeting on the 17th of August. Have a recommendation there. Do I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Ford.
Your worship, I move that the minutes of the council meeting held 17th of August 2023 be adopted as a true and correct record.
Thank you. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Blackmore, thank you. I put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion is carried. Thank you. Item 5, declaration of interest. Any of the items on our agenda today that elected members may need to declare. Councillor Short.
Sorry, I meant to seek the advice of the Chief Executive. As a member of the District Licensing Committee, should I stand down from that item?
Receiving the minutes.
That's right. The appointment of new commissioner. Yes. The replacement of Rod Tipkin. Yeah, so perhaps I'll just stand down from that one.
Thank you. Thank you for that. That is noted. Anything else? No? Right, let's carry on. Unfortunately, our public forum, item 6.1, has been postponed. We'll come back at a later date to talk about her netball championship. We do at 9:45 have some people joining us for that item, so we will skip past that one. Excuse me. There are no late items, so we can go straight to item 10 as no recommendations from committees either. So we're on page 12. This is the District Development Committee minutes from their last meeting, and I'll ask Councillor Ford as chair to highlight anything in there.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think pretty much everything can be taken as read. Yep, I've got nothing to highlight.
Thank you. Any questions rising from those minutes? None. Thank you. We also have the minutes from the last hearings committee. Councillor Short, is there anything in there you wish to highlight?
There's two parts to that one. Perhaps I'll comment to the second part.
Thank you. Yes, it does come up later in our meeting, so we can hold that one to there. And on page 21 are the minutes from our last Mana Whakahaere meeting. And happy to invite any of the councillors at that meeting. It was a good meeting getting the new representation both from council and from Kōwhata sorted, and so the number of observers there, and so the minutes are there. Councillor Bell or Councillor Ford, is there anything you wish to highlight?
Councillor Bell might like to go first.
No, Councillor Bell.
I was just stalling.
So there's a number of actions there that we're slowly getting through, and once we get confirmation of the new team from Kōwhata under Rarity's guidance, we'll be able to get into the review of the strategy and then revisit the actions where to next.
If I may just say, page 23, item 6, I just think it's worth all councillors having a read of that section. It's rather important. But that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Councillor Underwood.
I may be misreading it, but it looked like there was reference to two gifted names. The first one on page 21 being Maiwa, and the other one on page 23, Parakaraka. Is that?
We're talking about the potential gifting of the name to rename Precinct 4,
Yes.
which is under the Maiwa name, and the other one you refer to, you said, is on page 23?
Yeah. In that second box,
Okay.
the gifted name for the area. So is that a different, because it's still mentioning Precinct 4 there?
Correct. It is an ongoing discussion that we're having with Kōwhata around that, and at the appropriate time, they will come to council with the formal gifting for adoption. Councillor
Is there a choice between each name, is it?
Shane.
I think that Maiu was the name of that's being talked about for Precinct 5, and the other name refers to the recreational or walkway area that Anaru is working with our team to develop along the Mena stream. So,
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Bell can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that's pretty much right.
So Councillor Bell, is that your understanding of the names? That there's two parts to this. There's the actual precinct, and then there's the recreation space that we're working through.
Thank you, Worship. Yes, exactly what Shane said. Two different things. One's for the precinct name and the other one is for the land area. So it's not two different options.
Great, thank you. Councillor Hadfield.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I was a little bit intrigued actually by this because, well, 15 years ago when we moved up to Mount Taylor, I looked on the map and the area around sort of Mount Taylor down towards the cemetery comes up on the map as Maiwa, and it's already shown. And so I'm a little bit intrigued as to how a name that's already there is somehow being rejigged and re-gifted or whatever to an area that's already got a name now being shifted to Precinct 4. All I'm saying is that doesn't really worry me one way or the other what you call it, but I'm intrigued as to how we've already got an area that's referred to as Maiwa, and then all of a sudden we've got another one, or is it an expansion of the existing area?
Expansion.
Yeah, my understanding is it is an expansion, and as I say, we're still working through the process, and at the appropriate time, Kōwhata will come to council and make a presentation with the explanation around it. for council to consider adopting.
So just without being pedantic, the area or the name may was already applied. So how do you gift something that's already in place is the question I've got. It's just a technical question, that's all.
Thank you. Councillor Short.
My understanding is that Mount Taylor is captured in a net block from Stats New Zealand, which is referred to as Maiwa as well. So I think it is meant to be down on the flats, the area, but because the Stats block includes Mount Taylor, it on paper looks bigger than, Bridget may want to comment on that.
So let's pick up that comment and have that discussion further, and that can be explained and included in the discussion when it comes formally to council. Is there anything else in those minutes anyone wishes to comment on? No? Right, so we can go to the officer's report. We're on page 25, and this is the appointment of a commissioner and members to the district licensing committee. And as you will have seen in 2.1, Rod Titcombe, who's did serve as a previous chief executive to council, and then in more recent years has been the commissioner to the district licensing committee, and has now decided not to stand for reappointment. So the opportunity was there to approve and appoint a new commissioner and look at reappointing all new members to that committee. So Paul, looks like I'm handing over to you for this one.
Thank you, or Ash. Yes,
Team
that's
effort.
right. So as the Mayor pointed out, the District Commissioner at the moment is resigning as of October the 6th, I think it is, or somewhere around there, 23rd. And we need a new commissioner. So we've gone out and done some interviewing of various different people that we've spoken to. We got it down to 2, and we've selected Ross as our preferred candidate for that. Ross has extensive knowledge. He's a current serving councillor with Horowhenua and is their chairperson currently. Of course, he can't be a commissioner for them because he is a serving councillor, but he has extensive knowledge. He's done many hearings. He's all over the whole district licensing side of things, and yeah, he would serve us as commissioner well.
Thank you. And then you're looking to reappoint the other 2 members to that committee?
That's correct. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Hadfield.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. I had a couple of questions around this. One is under 1.5, which clearly covers the competencies of a commissioner under the SSAA, but it also says, according to this, under section 1932 of the SSA 2012, sets out that the chief executive may only appoint a person as a commissioner. And if that's the case, why is this before council if it's the chief executive that appoints the commissioner? It's my first question. And probably Paul's answered a little bit of the second question, which is when I looked on the Horowhenua District Council website, Ross is clearly still the chair of their licensing committee, and I just I was just assuming that that there was no conflict or time pressures for him in doing both of those roles.
No, we spoke at length with Ross about the time pressures. He is very confident that he can fulfill both roles. Our commissioner role is, as I said, it's part-time. It's rather limited in the amount of hours that would be involved. But Ross is very confident that he can cover both of those.
Thank you. Just carrying on from that, maybe for the benefit of everybody, can you just explain to us the role of the District Licensing Committee, its importance to what we do, and also how often they would meet?
With respect, Your Worship, I still haven't had an answer to the first part of my question.
Oh, of course, yes. Shane.
So I can make the appointment, but it has to be on the recommendation of the Territorial Authority.
Sorry.
It has to be on, I can make the appointment, but it has to be on the recommendation of the Territorial Authority. So you have to make the recommendation to me to make the appointment.
Thank you, Shane. That clarifies what is actually written in 1.5 because it didn't actually explain that.
I'm reading straight from the legislation.
Great, thank you. So Paul, can you just give us a bit more background behind the role of this committee and how often they would meet?
They meet on average monthly, and it determines all of the license applications for on licenses, off licenses and special licenses, as well as manager certificates and renewals of those certificates. As you can imagine, with the renewals, they're renewed every year. They come up quite frequently and they're scattered right throughout the year. So there is a meeting normally monthly where they will get together and they will determine those applications that have come in during that period of time.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Underwood.
There's reference to a commissioner and a chairman. Are they different roles? Are they the commissioner sits above the chairman?
Yeah, the chairperson has to be a member of the local council as a sitting councillor, whereas a commissioner can be independent of the council. So there is a lot of benefits to having a commissioner there as well. They have the same roles as per se, the same powers for the chairperson as is the commissioner. But with the commissioner, we get, one of the benefits of having a commissioner working in multiple different areas is you get consistency across the board with the decisions that are made around alcohol licensing. And of course, if there is a change in councillors through election or resignation or whatever, you do still have that consistency flowing through the commissioner role.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Councillor Hadfield.
Look, Your Worship, I'm actually happy to move. There's no doubt in my mind that Mr. Brannigan's got all the necessary skill and knowledge in this area. So I'm happy to move that the council appoints. Sorry, bear with me. The technology just started playing on the hearing aids.
Just before we go through that, given what the chief executive, should that wording read?
I think the wording should change, is that the council recommends to the chief executive the appointment of.
Yes.
Which is answering my question, isn't it?
Yes,
Yep.
correct. And
Okay.
that's then
So-
putting it into
So
the recommendation.
I'm happy to move that council recommends the chief executive appoint Ross Brannigan as commissioner to the District Licensing Committee for a period of 5 years from 18 October 2023 to 17 October 2028. And two, reappoints Clive Esplin and Joe Heslop as members of the District Licensing Committee for a period of 5 years from 18 October 2023 to 17 October 2028.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Blackmore, thank you. Any further questions, comments? Councillor Underwood.
Sorry, I had one other question. Under 2.5, officers following guidance from Health New Zealand. I looked under the website, couldn't find anything specific. Is it written there or is it?
Is this here? Selecting and appointing district licensing commissioners, it's quite detailed, the process that you go through. There's even interview questions to speak of at interviews, and just the general process there. So it's quite a hefty document.
So that is on the website somewhere?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Okay, I'll see you later. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further? Otherwise, those two recommendations are on the table, moved and seconded. I'll put the motions. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Motions are carried. Thank you. Look forward to that appointment. And also there is a function being organised to recognise and thank Rod Titcombe for the role that he has played on this committee coming up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, so we move to page 28. We're on 11.2. This is seeking an amendment to the council resolution that we made, and so that we get the wording technically correct. And the wording that we had previously didn't actually achieve the outcome that was anticipated. So it's come back to us for an amendment. And to take us through that, Oliver and Lynn, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so it got to the applicant's solicitor's stage, and they had a very keen eye and picked up that the wording of the recommendation technically meant that the road to be stopped would be amalgamated with both land parcels. whereas the outcome that we were seeking was to only amalgamate it with the parcel of land with the dwelling on it. Put simply, the reason why we don't want it amalgamated with both parcels is that would reduce the number of titles they have available to dispose. So this just keeps 2 titles available for them.
Okay, thank you. So it's pretty straightforward. Are there any questions or comments in relation to that change? So the correct wording is there in the recommendation. If I could have a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Ford.
I move that the council approve to amend the council resolution MDC 22-25 part 275 to read that the council approve the road stopping under section 116 of Public Works Act 1981 of an approximately 2,706 square metres portion of road legally described as section 1 SO 595009, which adjoins the northern boundary of 1 Barton Street, Halcombe, being legally described as section 228 subdivision A Manchester District on RTWN 17D bar 1418, and that section 1 SO 595009 be amalgamated with section 228 subdivision A Manchester District RTWN 17D bar 1418.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that recommendation, please? Councillor Belsky, thank you. Any further questions, comments? I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? The motion is carried. Thank you. Right, in the same theme, we're on page 41 with a new a new application to look at approving road stopping for Sherwell Street, Halcombe. We've noted an error in the recommendation. As you see on the screen, it's been updated. We had 123C twice, so it should read 123C and 123E. I guess a more general question I have on this one is, you know, when you look at some of these road stopping pieces of land, they're quite significant in size, and particularly the second one here, section 2. What is the general thinking about, you know, currently this council gifts it, but what do other councils do? Is there an opportunity to sell land to gain some revenue from this land? Shane.
So going back quite a few years, this council did used to require payment for the land, and then it stopped doing that and gifted the land. Now I've got Oliver doing some work around what other councils are doing. Some gift, some don't, some sell at market value. So we're going to bring a paper back to council, and so you can have a discussion what you want to do. The reason we haven't included this, what's fairly substantial, 7,900 square metres, is that these people were told of the policy we currently apply, so it'd be unfair to, you know, introduce new policy. So, and we're not really ready yet. We haven't got all that information, but it is a question that we are seeking. I'll get some guidance from those councils are doing, how they do it and how they apply what they apply, like market rates or discounted market rate. I don't know. We'll get that information and then we'll sit down and give a paper back to council. But I think there is some merit personally in charging for some of this land.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll hand it over to Oliver in just a moment. Councillor Short.
Just wanted to make a comment that I recall 10 or more years ago, the Halcombe Community Development Group did a little bit of work on paper roads in Halcombe. I think it was at that time 13 kilometres of paper roads in Halcombe. Wow. Because of the railway, Halcombe was surveyed to be a township of 1,000 people, which of course never happened. So there's lots of undeveloped portions of road. And they actually put a proposal that the council deal with it all in one package. And at that time, we declined.
Yep. There's way more than that across the district.
Yeah.
There would be hundreds of kilometres of paper roads throughout the district.
Councillor Hadfield.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. Yeah, Chief Executive just answered that question. I was wondering how much, what area we still had that potentially is up for, paper roads that are up for done. So I think that the question that Her Worship's raised is actually a very valid one. And I agree, there's nothing we should do that's retrospective, but I think, Shane, if you're happy to look into what happens in other areas in the process and, and the likely fiscal benefit, I think that's a really good process. Yeah.
Thank you. So Oliver, back to you. Sorry, we hijacked your
No worries.
presentation.
Thank you. Okay, so this road stopping, it involves 3 parties. I suppose the primary reason for the applicant applying for the road stopping is 127 Hastings Street. If you refer to attachment 1, the scheme plan, you'll see within the yellow, thank you, Lynn. You'll see within that yellow area there's a building within the road reserve. So that's the primary reason behind why they want to acquire the piece of road. And then I suppose other neighbours have got wind of it and wanted to jump on board as well. So the other parties are 123B and 90 Godley Street. So the applicant has been round all the other property owners which directly adjoin the road to be stopped as required under the legislation. I suppose 123B and 90 Godley Street has jumped on board and said they want a piece, and the remaining owners have said that they're not interested and given their written approval as required.
Thank you. Right, so any further questions or comments in relation to these 3? Otherwise, we have the 3 recommendations there, or the recommendation which covers the 3 sections. Can I have a mover and a seconder for those, please? Councillor Ford.
Council approved the road stopping under section 116 of the Public Works Act 1981 of an approximately 7,920 square metres portion of road, legal description to be advised, which adjoins 123B, 123C, 123E and 127 Hastings Street and 66 and 90 Godley Street, Halcombe, and that section 1 being approximately 360 square metres in size be amalgamated with 123B Hastings Street, legally lot 4DP 576819, and section 2 being approximately 5,000 square metres in size be amalgamated with 127 Hastings Street, legally lot 2 DP 41, and section 3 being approximately 2,560 square metres in size be amalgamated with 90 Godley Street, legally section 3 Manchester District.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for it, please? Councillor McFadyen, thank you. No further comments. Councillor Blackmore.
I do just have a question about the letters in support. Really just a general question about, what's the approach to getting support from neighbouring properties. I notice in this one in particular, there's a letter of support from, sorry, lost my page, 123C, which kind of is on the boundary of the paper road, and 123E, which isn't, but in between is 123D, and they don't have a boundary either, but I'm just curious about that and whether people might actually object and we just don't know.
Sure.
Whether it matters.
Yeah. So what the legislation requires is if it indicates that a landowner which adjoins a paper road is entitled, I suppose, to apply to close it. But there is a requirement that they ask the other adjoining landowner if they would like to be part of it. If they do want to be part of it, then generally they go halves or whatever other agreement. But if they don't have an immediately adjoining boundary, then the legislation doesn't require that consultation.
Thank you. Was there any other questions, comments? Councillor Short.
Just a comment, the aerial photo doesn't really show it, but it's actually quite a steep hill, isn't it? It's
Yes, it is.
it's not a I don't think you'd build a house there.
Thank you. Councillor Underwood.
As far as income to council goes, these people will be paying extra rates, I assume, once those portions of land are amalgamated.
Yes, I believe so. I think that question was asked at a previous one, yes.
Yeah, that's my understanding. Thank you. So we have a mover and a seconder. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion is carried. Thank you. Thanks, Oliver.
Thank you.
Right, have we got Amanda's with us? Is she here today? Oh, okay. Okay, so the next two items do require Amanda. Here comes Shane. Shane, is Amanda joining us for the next two items? So you
Gonna
can.
fall on me, I suspect.
Okay, so 11.4, and we're on page 65. This is the adoption of the liability management policy, which you recall we went through in a workshop. And this policy sets out the parameters of how we manage our borrowing activities and our external liabilities. And then if you look at 10.2, the recommendation is that there's only one change being proposed, and that's in regards to the fixed and floating rates policy bands. So Shane, is there anything else you want to raise in that?
Not really. You'll recall we have brought this policy to council and had a discussion with you about it. And really the only issue we did have was those bands regarding floating and fixed rates. So we seek to correct that just so that we don't breach our own policy, which at the moment we do, but that's okay.
Thank you. Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Shane. Yeah, we did go over this at a workshop on the 3rd of August, as noted. That was, to be honest, that was more of just a review via a PowerPoint presentation. I didn't have much time at that point to review it, but I have reviewed both this and the next one, the investment policy, since. And I think there are a few tweaks that council could discuss and consider. I'm happy to list those now, but in terms of process, these two policies form part of the financial strategy and the long-term plan, so that's why we're considering them. They'll obviously need to be adopted by the time of the annual plan. Is that correct?
So they are not part of the LTP, they sit alongside.
Right.
So they don't go out for consultation as part of the LTP.
No, so they're not listed in the annual plan, but they are mentioned in there.
Yep, because our policies we set for ourselves to comply with, but they sit separate. They're not part of the LTP.
Yeah, no, that's okay. So I'm just wondering, in terms of process to review these, if I can go through a couple of perhaps suggestions that I've got, whether or not council wanted to refer these two to the Audit Risk Committee for further review, which would, the next meeting of that's on the 28th of September, and then it have to come back to council for a final review after that. Would you like me just to quickly go over the three?
Yes, I
things
think so, yes.
So I've
Just to
spotted?
highlight the points. Yep.
Yeah, okay. So in the first one, the liability management policy, for example, in section 2.2, there's a discussion about short-term debt, but the primary means of borrowing money is through the local government funding agency. So technically that shouldn't need a requirement for overdraft facilities at all. But do we tend to, the question then, do we tend to use overdraft at all?
Only really for cash flow, but we do use it, and we also use it in emergency situations. So we can't just walk on into LGFA and borrow money. We have to wait for them to put money on up for tender.
Yeah.
So we use the overdraft facility, not much, but we have got it there sitting with the bank, and we do now and again, we do utilise it.
All right, so maybe that's just a question and no need to change anything. In recent, I just note in recent years, I don't think we have had to use any overdraft because we borrowed a reasonable amount and kept a reserve fund. So I don't think we would have used overdraft much at all in recent times. But anyway.
Not so much now that we are funding depreciation the way we do through cash, as opposed to previously we used to do it through borrowing.
Okay. All right. Section 4 talks about security and the council offering security. The primary method is to offer a charge over rates. So we don't tend to offer any other security like mortgages on assets. Section 4.2 mentions, I think section 4.2 is a little bit general. That really is talking about we might put an HP over a car or a lease agreement over a vehicle. But as it's written, 4.2 allows us to put security over anything, and it might need a little bit of refinement. Comment further on that one.
I have to seek a bit of advice from Amanda to be perfectly clear, but all our borrowing is through LGFA, and they won't accept any other securities other than the ability to repay.
Yeah.
Which is through their trust deed, or their deed. I'd have to clarify that one with her. That's might not even be needed in there.
No, so that was a question. I thought maybe that section needs a bit of clarity around it. Section 7.1 is about approval of borrowing. Now it refers to exceptional borrowing. So it gives council the permission to borrow for exceptional reasons. And I guess that would be an example might be if a piece of land came up and required a short-term decision, council chose to buy it. The problem we have, of course, is that it may well be a major purchase and we don't have time for any community consultation, so we can't determine if the community would or would not approve that type of transaction. So I think
the other one is in significant emergency events.
Right.
We do have to borrow, and that's why we carry that overdraft facility through the bank. So there's been times when we had to borrow $3 or $4 million through the facility and then wait up to sometimes 9-10 months to get reimbursement from NZTA.
Right.
And we just do that because we have to get the works repaired and all that.
Yeah. Sorry, I was actually referring to section 5.1, which talks about it says borrowing particularly for urgent nature for which the community is willing to pay. But we wouldn't necessarily know whether or not the community is willing to pay. So might just need to think about that.
Where are you at?
Section 5.11 in the middle of it. It's really around the decision making.
So the wording says communities' desire for projects to proceed, particularly those of an urgent nature and for which the community is willing to pay.
Okay. I'm just wondering if that compromises the point about, the fact we need to consult on major decisions.
Well, only in respect of that, as it relates to any sort of community project.
Okay.
So if community came up with a ripper of a suggestion that they wanted to build something in the middle of Halcombe, it's going to cost $3 million, then council would say, are you prepared to pay that service that by way of a targeted rate? And they went, yep. Then council would take into consideration and potentially borrow the money to fund the project.
So that doesn't preclude us, that wording doesn't stop us for things like emergency events.
No. All right.
Does that satisfy your query?
Well, I don't know, I was just looking for clarity in the policy, really.
Well, it's just really, it's providing an additional ability for council to approve funding other than its strict borrowing limits.
Yeah, I mean, a degree of common sense applies in these decisions when we go to borrow. But if we're going to have policy, probably should be fairly clear. Policy is a rule. So, look, I'm not overly concerned about it, but and I'm sure that common sense does apply, and the policies work reasonably well. So far, we haven't borrowed for invalid purposes.
And all borrowing is approved by council. Yeah, that's the other safeguard we have, is that I don't have authority to just go and borrow money. I can only borrow within the resolutions passed by council. So you'll recall part of your resolutions when you adopt the annual plans or LTPs is that there's a borrowing resolution. And that's what gives me the authority to borrow the money council needs for its capital projects. I can't move outside of it unless it's an emergency provision.
Yeah.
And then I can, but the rest of it has to come back to council.
Yeah.
Additional borrowing.
Yeah. So that is probably one area that requires a minor tweak is 7.1. It says council will approve borrowings, but I think it does need to refer to also to the fact that council can approve borrowings for exceptional circumstances, referring back to section 5.1 outside of the annual planning process.
That's or by later resolution during the year. So you can do it through the borrowing resolution, but you can do it by later resolution.
Yeah, already done for borrowing.
So you're happy that that wording covers what you're talking about? Exceptional would come under later resolution?
Well, I suppose it does. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. So they were just.
So having had
minor
that
comments.
discussion and those responses, are you comfortable then with where we're looking to proceed today?
Yeah. Though, like I say, I think they're relatively minor tweaks or concerns, but yeah, if common sense applies to the use of the policy, then it's appropriate, I think.
Thank you. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a question, Shane. I'm just seeking clarification in section 5. So our debt limit, so 5.1.2, it has net interest must not exceed 20% of total revenue. And then it also says net debt must not exceed 175% of total revenue. What are the two differences and what do they mean? And why such a big difference in the percentage?
I'm so pleased because Amanda's just walked in the door. And that one there was one where I would have to defer to her because on that one I'm not quite.
So Amanda, can someone give you a microphone? And
I
sorry,
could probably answer that. Those guidelines are set by the local government funding authority, and we've just adopted their guidelines as part of this policy.
Thank you. But it would be good to have an explanation on exactly the questions that Councillor Bell asked, particularly why the percentages are so different. Sorry, Amanda, to have pop this on you.
Sorry, I've just pulled up the LGFA because I'm wondering, I can't see two things on one screen, so I'm just having a quick look. I'm just going to read the 4 limits out, and because I can't see what you're seeing right now, and just let me know that if they're different to what you are viewing.
Okay.
Net interest must not exceed 20% of total revenue.
And then the net debt.
And then the net interest must not exceed 25% of annual rates. It is exactly the same. Oh, thank goodness for that.
Yes.
I was just checking, I hadn't typed up.
So it is
something
exactly the
down.
same, but Councillor Bell's asking for an explanation of the second and third bullet point, particularly around the difference. What do they actually mean?
That's not what we're looking at. I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank. I'm going to have to come back to you because I haven't had my head in this for a while.
We can do that executive only time. It's just those two that just, I would, and going back to Councillor Stewart's, I did read 5.1.3. Is there any time where we don't follow LGFA and we change the numbers? Can we change those numbers, or are we always feeling comfortable that we will do the exact same limits that they use?
Can I speak? Can I speak to that?
Amanda.
We do also impose that extra 5 mil limit ourselves. So although these are the maximum that LGFA will allow us to borrow up to through our financial strategy, we've also imposed ourselves another 5K buffer, we call it. So no matter what the limit is, based on these measures, we will not borrow past the 5 mil unless it's an emergency event. So that's one of the measures we've put over top.
Awesome.
But you can absolutely do a lesser ratio than this. You just can't go higher because you wouldn't actually be able to borrow.
Thank you. So does that answer your questions, councillor?
Thank you, Bishop.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Underwood.
In 6.4, we may be called upon to contribute a portion of our borrowing back to LGFA as an equity contribution. If that was to happen, how would we fund that?
Can I speak to that?
Amanda.
And I won't be using the terminology correctly. So, but every time we borrow from LGFA, we have a bond. So if we borrow $1 million, there's a percentage that it's actually left in LGFA as an equity portion. So we actually use that out of the borrowing that we're currently doing. So instead of withdrawing the whole lot, we do I think it's called a bond. I'm having bond, isn't it?
Bond.
Yeah.
I have to sign a bond certificate every time that we borrow for that to remain as a bond with LGFA. So that's how it's funded.
So you're saying if you borrow $1 million, you don't get the whole $1 million?
That's right. Some of it's retained as a bond, equity bond.
And that's where they take it back if they get into cash flow problems. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion on any of this? It's good discussion to have because this does set the policy, and it's important that we get it right and that we're all comfortable with it. So if there's no further questions, we have a recommendation on page 65. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Councillor Blackmore.
I move that the council adopts the liability management policy as set out in Appendix 1.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that motion, please? Councillor Campbell, would you be comfortable to second it? Thank you. No further discussion. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion is carried. Thank you. So on a similar vein, looking for adoption is on page 76 is our investment policy. We've, as before, we've had the discussion and workshop. So this policy gives us guidance on the approach we take when managing our investments on behalf of the community. And we are seeking 2 minor changes which are set out in 2.1.1. Amanda, is there anything else you would like to add to this?
Stop looking at someone's microphone. Just that although the changes are minor from a word point of view, they're not minor from an intention point of view. So the main one that comes to my mind is we are changing and taking out some sentences which actually will allow you in the future to invest in property if you choose to, as an investment. Whereas in the past, we were very specific that council does not purchase property for the intention of an investment. You'll recall we've had some presentations, at least one that comes to mind, where a ratepayer suggested that this, a potential purchase would be a good idea. And on paper, if we'd done the stats, and it may have been a good idea, we wouldn't have been able to under our existing policy. So this policy will then now give you the ability to actually consider those kinds of things should they come forward. It won't mean that you can whip out there and buy and up large and become a buyer and seller of land, because you still have to go through your financial, make sure you can actually do it financially and do due diligence and that kind of thing. But it at least gives you the ability to actually consider these things. So that's quite a different slant to what we had before, showing that, because of course, as soon as you buy, look to invest in property purchases and that, there's always an element of risk. And before we were very risk adverse. Now you're saying, and through this policy, you're giving yourself the ability to actually consider it. Okay.
Thank you. So any questions or comments on this one? Councillor Campbell.
Same again. A few things now I've had a bit of time to review it. First one is possibly a clause that's not there, and that's around considering whether we should have a clause in about council's approach to ethical, social, responsible investments. So if we're investing money, it's pretty common in these sort of policies now to include that sort of clause, and it would refer to things like we will not invest in investments that are associated with child labour or gambling or I don't know, alcohol, nasty things. And it reinforces our commitment to doing the right thing. So perhaps that should, a clause like that should be in there. Wasn't probably something thought about 3 or 4 years ago, but now it definitely is. And section 3.5, sorry, 3.6 refers to community loans and advances. Just wondering about a bit more clarity there. Just a minute, got a note on that. Whether or not we should specify the types of community benefits. So in the LTP, the last LTP, we had a comment in that paper about, or that document, the main objective of providing loans to community organisations is to provide social, economic, cultural and environmental benefits to the district. That's a fairly wide-ranging statement because technically under economic we could loan to any business or any entity. That might be a bit wider than the intent of what we normally do. So whether we should specify the types of community benefits that we would contribute to, for example, social services, housing, health, safety, arts, sports, that type of thing. Community benefits is a fairly wide-ranging definition. What anyone else thinks? We need to.
So Amanda or Shane, you want to comment on that one?
Again, common sense might apply, but I'll just give an example. A few years ago, you'll recall we did make a loan to Manchester House. Manchester House, I think at about the same time, got financial difficulty. There was a risk that that money might not have come back to council. So that's the other thing to think about, the criteria for assessing community organisations that we might advance funds to.
We've advanced funds to the likes of Manfield in its inception, loans, but also Coach House Museum.
Yeah. Fielding Steam Rail.
Yep, Steam Rail.
Yeah.
There's quite a few actually. There's quite a few community loans that council's approved over the years. You could list all of the community benefits. It'd be a long list.
Yeah.
And the danger of that
diverse.
is you might miss something.
Diverse, yeah, and then you ring fence yourself to what you've listed. So.
Yeah.
Well, you could always put not listed as not exclusive. You could have a non-exclusive list, and that would give you the.
Well, then you may as well just have an open-ended that council can evaluate. So
Anything's possible.
yeah.
I suppose those decisions would normally come to council anyway before we made an advance to it.
So that absolutely have to come to council.
That's right.
So
we do have that protection that it comes
okay.
here.
yeah.
That's all right.
So I suppose you guys are that buffer. You know, your individual points of view are the ones that bring that clarity to it, the criteria. So yeah, absolutely. We cannot advance to anybody. Like we just can't do that under our delegations. It has to be budgeted. You guys approve that. And also you'll note, even when we were advancing budgeted funds to one of our CCOs, that still comes as a paper to you to say it's budgeted, they've applied for it. Are you happy with that? So
Community trust.
yeah, absolutely comes through. Councillor Stewart, you talked about paraphrasing it, making sure that we invest in ethical things. Appendix 1 is where we're allowed to invest. When I'm thinking investment, I'm thinking when we've got surplus cash, we're investing, which is actually straight out banks at the moment. We don't invest anywhere outside of that, but we could do government bonds, registered banks, local authorities, state. Those are the ones there that we can do. We can't just go and invest in kind of anything else. So I think that would cover, because those are, I believe, wouldn't be any linked to anything that
Maybe
unethical.
outside of those, so those restrictions sort of.
So I kind of feel that would be covered, but happy if you don't
Those
believe that.
corporates. Well, corporates is listed there.
Pretty restricted. To be fair, we use banks. Yeah, and
It's mainly the corporate stuff, that might be involved in child labour or manufacturing and.
yeah. And if we were to step outside using just banks, it would be different practice. So we'd be coming back to you anyway as council.
Right.
Yeah.
So you're comfortable that that ethical question is covered relatively okay under Appendix 1?
Well, sort of, but just to keep in mind anyway. I just wanted to raise it with council that it's something we should be thinking about.
I think the S&P rating that's required in there would also be linked to the part of the ranking of that comes out from S&P would cover the ethical background of the entities.
Yeah.
Because we're only sticking with A and A plus. And
yeah, okay, we'll leave it as is. The only other minor question was around section 2.1 where it refers to adequate funds. So, how you define what adequate funds are.
Yeah.
Could be a difference of opinion.
Virtually on a day-to-day basis. So really, we're constantly managing our cash flow to make sure that we've got enough funds for whatever's projected within the next 4, 6 and 8 weeks. Depending on what we have coming up, the adequate funds in our bank account could range from 1 mil to 3 mil, depending on what's coming up. It's constantly a look at how much do we need going forward and making sure we've got that buffer. In reality, what's happening is if we find we've got a little bit more than we expect, we are popping it out onto term investment or into various bank accounts with our main banks based on whoever's got the best interest rate. So on a day-to-day basis, we're constantly flicking around, making sure that whatever surplus cash is invested in earning something. But that's absolutely, at the moment, that sits with me, is to make sure that we've got enough cash to pay whatever comes up.
Okay.
We do also have the $10 million liquidity function that allows us, if we do get that wrong, but we haven't drawn that in the last 3 years.
Okay. I think that's the last thing. Section 4.1, it says council's main objective with all investments is to preserve its capital base. I think that should say grow its capital base, because if we're preserving it, basically means we're going backwards because inflation's outstripping us. So we should be growing, I think, not preserving.
I'm not so sure, because our capital base is the core infrastructure that we require to provide our levels of service. If we are keeping them at the level, and bearing in mind that we're revaluing each year, then I believe that's the base we need to have. If we are to grow, my concern would be that the perception of council or people outside of council would be that we're supposed to be purchasing more and more and more and more, or building more and more and more. And I wouldn't want that to be the perception.
Well, that's what we do.
I think preserving and making sure that our assets and base is actually up fit for service is the key, but let's steer from you.
I get your point, but we don't always invest
to get
grow
more
capital. Sometimes we invest just to grow our money.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
Preserve.
So is that the end of your list of questions, Councillor Campbell?
Yep.
Thank you. So we've got a number of questions. Councillor McFadden.
Thank you, Worship. Could I suggest we put the word maintain the capital base, because that's relative to what we actually have to achieve?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Second thing, the investment policy really is an authority, from what I see, is an authority for the council staff to explore opportunities, but ultimately it doesn't give them the authority to spend. That still has to go through the process. So if we don't enable them to do this, then we will never really have the opportunity to look at those other potential things that may benefit the community going forward.
Thank you. So you raised the suggestion about changing the word preserve to maintain. Is that, Amanda, is that something that you see would be necessary to do, or?
It's not necessary, but it could absolutely be done. There'd be nothing against that. That'd be absolutely fine.
Okay, so we
Change
could,
preserve to maintain.
we could consider that in our recommendation. Councillor Blackmore? No, you didn't have a hand. Councillor Ford?
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to thank Councillor Campbell for raising these issues to get us thinking, because I think even if we don't change the policy, he's reminding us to ask these sort of questions when it does come to us making decisions. And I think that's particularly helpful because, as Chief Executive's pointed out, there are a number of occasions when these big decisions do come back to council, and it's really good to be reminded of the sorts of issues that Councillor Campbell's raised. So I'm particularly keen on the main purpose of the change here, which is to do with 3.5.1. I think I've got the right number. Because that just gives us some options that we haven't had in the past.
Yes.
Not that we're rushing out to use them. I'm happy to move the motion when you've got to the end of other questions and queries, etc.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? Councillor Hadfield.
Yes, thanks, Your Worship, and forgive me if I've been indulging in deep contemplation. I may have missed this, but Civic Financial Services Limited that we have a shareholding in, that slipped me. Can you remind me what that is and why we've got a shareholding?
Do you want to answer that, Shane?
It's two reasons.
Change of time fund.
I wish.
Sure.
Civic Financial Services also run, what's the name of it? Pretty much the council's super scheme.
Yeah. The council's wide, not our council.
Council wide.
Yeah.
Across councils. Across the country. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I wouldn't mind if it was my super scheme.
We would. Right, thank you. Any other questions? Otherwise, Councillor Ford.
Firstly, apologies to Chief Executive. I move that council adopts the investment policy as set out in Appendix 1.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor McFadyen. No further questions?
You just want to note that change.
Noting
4.1.
that the word
Preserve
in paragraph 4.1 changes to maintain.
Word preserve in 4.1 changes to maintain.
Thank you. Might as well tidy it up completely. Thank you. So I had it moved. Councillor McFadyen, you seconded it. Thank you. No further questions. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Motion is carried. Thank you. Like Councillor Ford said, thank you, Councillor Campbell, for raising those, because it's really important that we reflect on this and get it right, because you know, making sure that we have the opportunities and have the mechanisms and the protection when we're dealing with finances. So thank you for that. Right, so having dealt with some pretty heavy topics, let us go back to item 7 on our agenda today. Oh, we're going to do it over there.
Okay.
So item 7 is, it's great pleasure today to be able to do this, and welcome to our people in the public gallery. And so I will introduce the topic and we'll carry on from there. So each year our council invites the community to nominate deserving individuals or groups for our Community Honours Awards. The Manawatu Community Honours Awards recognise significant contributions to our community by individuals or groups. The nominees must have carried out outstanding service in the fields of community service, welfare, sport, culture, the arts, recreation and/or education. These awards were initiated by this council in 1991, and to date 141 district residents have now been honoured. As we know, volunteering is at the heart of any successful community, and volunteers by their definition are not paid. They give their time freely and they are our unsung heroes. This year, our Community Honours Awards recipients will be announced at a special ceremony on Thursday, the 21st of September. Unfortunately, for one of our winning recipients this year, they are unable to join us on that night as they will be overseas. So it is very fitting today that we take the time out to recognise this outstanding contribution, and I'd like to please ask Councillor Alison Short to bring forward Henry Wheeler. So Henry, if you'd like to come and join me and your family and your support crew, your daughter Claire, welcome. No, not your daughter, no? Sorry. Oh, welcome, Nicola. So just before we do the awards part, I'd just like to tell you a little bit about Henry. Most of you will know Henry, but no, it's too late. The Rongatia community, Henry, have told us that you are an outstanding person and a valuable member of your community, putting in years of hard work, asking for nothing in return. And I recall when I phoned you the other day that you said, but I was brought up to help anybody who needed help. And that's certainly what you've done above and beyond. Henry has served more than 50 years in the Rongatia Fire Brigade, reaching the roles of Deputy Chief and then Chief Fire Officer. When neighbourhood support was set up after a spate of minor crimes, you would push fight with a group of helpers patrolling the streets in the early hours, one night a week for about 5 hours until the mischief disappeared. Henry is an elder in his church and along with Jenny has taken in many overseas exchange students, shown them around our country, and we know that many of those young people still keep in contact with you. When you had your engineering workshop running, people would bring you things to mend. You would do this willingly, charging little or nothing, just happy to see that the people were happy that their possessions had been repaired. But we also understand that you upset a few people along the way with your methods of how you help out your community. Henry was known to collect dead cows and bring them to your depot in the Rongatia Square, where you would secure the cow to your trailer and remove the skin by pulling it off with your tractor. You would then salt the hides and eventually sell the skins. But what many people do not know is that the money you raised from doing this allowed the Rongatia Swimming Pool Committee to buy chemicals to keep the pool running over the summers. We also know that as a member of the Rongatia Community Committee, you have done and continue to take on projects, and with your determination will not give up until they are complete. When the village was offered 1,500 cherry trees, it was Henry who got out and dug the holes and planted many of those trees. So these are only a few of the various projects and ways that you, Henry, have supported your community. So today we want to say thank you and recognise your dedication and commitment to your community by awarding you a 2023 Manawatu District Community Honour Award. So that is your community honours pin. Wear it with pride and congratulations. Well done.
Thank you very much, Your Worship.
And this is your certificate you can proudly hang in your home in recognition of your service to our community. So along with that, we've a native plant, manuka, from our plant nursery here, and behind every good man, of course, is a good woman. So thank you, Claire. Thank you and congratulations to both of you for the service that you've given, particularly to the Rongatia community over many years.
It's all mine, isn't it?
Absolutely. Okay.
Well, just thank you, your worship, and also the councillors. That obviously, I can't deny what Helen has read out. And certain fact, I didn't get a very good name with the cow situation, but at least I did keep the pool open, so that was one of those situations. So yes, no. Thank you very much for these for this pin. It is an honour to be worn, and I'll wear it with pride on my jacket. So for that, I don't have any more to say, but thank you very much.
Thank you and congratulations. And Mark Sperry, who's also the chair of the Rongotia Community Committee, if you would like to say something in support of the nomination for Henry.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, well deserved. He's done a huge amount for our community. It's not just the big things, it's the little things. If someone was having a problem, he'd always turn up. Sometimes got between husband and wife when they're having difficulty, and he would get them together and just never tell anyone, just sort it out. When we have a car accident, people whose car was damaged was that they we couldn't get anywhere, so Henry would give them a ride home, and just the little things like that to make a real difference to a community. Good on you, Henry. Congratulations.
If we can have a photo, please, for our publicity around the community honours. So Claire, would you like to join us?
Jenny.
Sorry,
Just
just
not a problem. I can get that far.
right.
You haven't
Sure.
got that far.
Do you want to hold the? So let's have a photo of Claire and you, and then we'll get a group photo. Excellent. Would you like to come and join in for the photo?
Yeah, I'll go behind, eh?
Yes.
Well done, congratulations. So with that, I'll adjourn our meeting and invite everybody to morning tea.
Good morning, Dee.
Absolutely.
They don't normally get it because of you.
That's just the box where it's come out. Was councillor Ford out there, Steve? Was Michael out there?
I haven't seen them.
Right. Have we got a truancy on?
Thanks, Lynn.
Not sure Lynn's gonna.
Okay.
Come out, Michael. Back all together.
Sounds like she's found him. Welcome back. It shouldn't have taken that long. Okay, thank you. Have we got Bridget back online? Not yet, okay. So we'll welcome her back when, so I'll reconvene our meeting and so we've got to, where are we? Item 11, there are no late items. So item 13 is public excluded. And I will move that the public be excluded from the following parts of the proceedings of this meeting, namely the confirmation of minutes, minutes from other committees, 2 sets of those, and release of public excluded resolutions to open session. Happy to move that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Ford, put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Motion is carried. Thank you. Right, so